Good afternoon and welcome to Football League World TV. My name is Ned Holmes and this is the Millwall Fan Debate. Today I'm joined by Ryan Loftus from London Football Scene to talk about really the Lions' bouncing form over the last few weeks and whether Gary Warrett's men really are playoff bound this season. Ryan, how are you doing today?
Yeah, really good, Ned. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, as we were saying just sort of before we came sort of on air, it's hard to really put a finger on what's changed. That really difficult January period and perhaps a frustrating January transfer window as well. But it's all positivity around the club now, and obviously culminating in that win on Saturday. We'll sort of try and dig into what's going on really and what the rest of this season could hold. Before we get started, just a reminder, as always, please do give this video a like and subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube and let us know your thoughts in the comments. You know, why do you think things have turned around for Millwall and where do you think, how high do you think that they can finish this season? Well, naturally, Ryan, we'll start with Saturday. We touched on it briefly, but before we came on there, but obviously a 1-0 win against Sheffield United and a sort of not perhaps unfair to say a classic Millwall performance, but you know, a set piece goal and a resolute defensive display. Certainly, you know, the signs there of what Millwall have been under Gary Rowett. And, you know, we shouldn't forget, I guess, Jake Cooper's goal helped the Lions end Sheffield United's 9-game unbeaten run, which had them in the top 6. But just how impressive were Millwall on Saturday?
Yeah, I think to say it was a classic Millwall win is pretty fair. I mean, it was not obviously attacking brilliance. Millwall aren't necessarily known for that, but it was just defensive solidity. We've kept like you say, an informed Sheffield United side really quiet for 90 minutes. They didn't have a lot in the game where they could have won it, and then obviously win it with a set-piece goal. I think Sheffield United fans must hate Jake Cooper. I think that's his 4th goal, and I think 3 of them have been late winners as well, so against them. So, you know, they must be sick of him. But I think this was the not the first big test for Millwall, but this was a big test in terms of Millwall's kind of upturn in form, and this has solidified it a bit. You know, we've played a poor Cardiff side, and we were poor in that game as well. And it was just, we happened to be the least bad side on the pitch that day. And then, you know, a game against Derby, obviously they're having a bit of resurgence and doing well. But again, not necessarily expect to beat them, but we have a good history of beating Derby recently away with Rowett's connections. A couple of our players are former, like they get up for it a bit more. And then QPR as well, obviously high in the table, but they were drastically out of form when we played them. So this is the first time we've come up against a team who were doing very well and completely nullified them really at home. It was the fans played a big part. I think a lot of the players have said that afterwards, that the atmosphere created by the fans, although it's 0-0 for long periods, kind of lifted the players and helped them drive on. The atmosphere has entirely changed since the last time we spoke about the January transfer window, when we won a terrible run of form. It looked like our season was dead and buried. It looked like, you know, the fans were turning against Rowett. It is all changed now. The Den was rocking yesterday or on the weekend, and it was, you know, a bumper crowd from what it has been in the last month or so.
Absolutely. We'll talk about sort of Den then. I think that's 4 on the bounce. Is it now at home? I know 4 out of 5 in 2022 at home. Is it really just, you know, we've both been there this season when there's been toxic atmospheres, you know, booing at half time, and is it really just that there's sort of more of a connection now, do you feel, between the fans and the players, or is it, you know, because as you say, that it's not just as simple as the wins are coming and therefore the crowds change. It seems like those wins are sort of feeding off the crowd as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's, you know, Millwall we talk about our kind of you know, notable atmosphere and our kind of like famous atmosphere at the Den. We're no different to any other club in the extent that, you know, the crowds will be better and noisier when you're playing well. And that's been the case. When Millwall were playing really poor, obviously the football under Rowett at times has been really dreadful to watch and been really attritional and just turgid, and draws or losses that keeps fans away and keeps them not happy. As soon as you get some wins together and everyone's back out, lovely sunny day on the weekend as well. So that all plays a part in it. But the players as well that are performing, obviously we'll come on to him later, but Tyler Bury is a fan favourite without really people haven't seen much, but he's a young player coming through. Obviously you've got Danny McNamara and Billy Mitchell in the side as well, players that the club can relate to. Jed Wallace back in the side now. You know, it's all the faces and figures that the Millwall fans love. who are in the side and performing well. And they do feed off of that. I think Millwall have always, for the last 5 or 6 years, had a really close-knit squad. And that's kind of something that Neil Harris nurtured back when he was manager, and has remained, that they have a great team chemistry. And when we're playing well, especially when it's kind of backs against the wall, or you're seeing yourself as an underdog, the players really feed off the fans with that. And it is a big unity that you get. I think lockdown was massive, and behind closed doors was massive. I think Millwall won the same number of games in 28 as they have done in, I think it's like 11 or 12 home games this time with fans back. So it took us a little while to get back to being used to having fans in, but it's starting to make a difference again. And like on Saturday, I think grinding out a result like that is that much easier at the Den with fans.
Certainly, and definitely as if Millwall can sort of keep putting pressure on those teams above them, it is going to become even more of an advantage in those sort of tight, cagey games towards the end of the season where everyone's sort of clawing for points. Well, we touched on him slightly there, Ryan, and sometimes you feel it's perhaps oversimplified to just say Jed Wallace is back in form and Millwall are back firing, but equally, we shouldn't underestimate really just how much of an influence a Jed Wallace sort of back at hot gear, I think is perhaps the best way to say it, has had on this team.
Yeah, he's really firing. I think, again, unsurprisingly, we had such a bad January. He was injured for the entire month. I think there was a very, very small section online who were saying, is he not playing because he wants to move? But, he was injured, and he is, although his contract situation is still looming over it, he is one of the most committed players Millwall have had in a long time. He is Millwall's best player. He's up there. I think he will leave the club as one of Millwall's best ever players, if top 5 potentially. He's just so crucial. I think since 2019-20, it's been 56 or 53 goal involvements. I think it's 1 every 2 games, a goal or assist every 2 games over 3 or 4 years now. Just insane. And when he first came back, obviously, had to get back to full fitness, and I think we saw that against Fulham. Although we lost 3-0, he did change the game. Millwall were really unlucky to not score in that game and could have been 2-2 at points before their late kind of clincher. He's just hit form again against QPR. He was just sensational, assisting the goals. The work he was doing was just absolutely phenomenal. And again, his set piece delivery, as well as everything he brings off the ball and in open play, his set piece delivery is a massive part. We've got a very big team, and when he can put a ball in the box better than most, it just increases our chances from scoring from it. We've not scored from many corners this season, especially we've lost some target men. But we play a back 3, and all of our back 3 are massive. So when we get good delivery in, we're always a threat. And just having him back and having that connection with the players he does around him, everyone else seems to be lifted, and he allows the attack to be a bit more fluid. When he's not in the side, we're very, very structured in attack and very turgid. It's very hard for Millwall to get a goal, whereas Jed Wallace provides that spark, and he provides that improvisation that we've seen so much since he's been back. And he's just he's Millwall's best player by a long way, and one of the best in the Championship.
Absolutely, and I think something that I've really noticed, particularly in recent weeks at the Den, is even with obviously Millwall being drastically unlucky with attacking injuries in particular, but it does seem, and we'll come on to Mason Bennett and Tyler Burry shortly, but it does seem as though that there's a real understanding between those 3, and certainly Ollie Burke as well after his arrival. It is certainly not the Jed Wallace show. It's a sort of a front 3 which is or a trio of attacking players rather, which are sort of really clicking together, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's got a weird fluidity to it. It's very much like the Mourinho style, where you have everyone behind the ball, and then the attackers can, you pretty much say, go and attack, sort of. Yeah. Like Mason Bennett isn't quite a winger, isn't quite a striker, can play across all those positions. Jed Wallace similarly, traditionally a right winger, but can play across the front 3. Ollie Burke similar. So those are the sort of attackers that Rowett has favoured to bring in, because they're the sort we have had in the past as well. Normally paired with a out-and-out striker like Tom Bradshaw or Benik Afogi, who are both injured at the moment. But obviously without the striker, he's practically playing 3 players in. Recently it's been Mason Bennett, Jed Wallace and Tyler Burey, who are all capable of kind of filling up anywhere across that front 3. So it just makes it all a bit more fluid and a bit more creative. And the relationship they seem to have had already. I mean, I know Jed Wallace and Tyler Burey are very close. Obviously, he's the young player coming through, and Jed has taken him under his wing to a massive extent. So although they might not have played a lot on the pitch together, they train every day together, and these relationships form beyond that. So you can see that immediately on the pitch, despite not having many minutes. You can see that connection's there from the off, and it just lifts Millwall's attacking threat so much when we have that.
Certainly, and moving on to Mason Bennett, then, as you say, he's a really interesting sort of forward in that he doesn't perhaps fit into the model of a traditional winger or a traditional striker, but that the sort of structured defence and fluid attack that Millwall play under Rowett really seems to suit him, and he's someone that I think deserves a lot of credit. 3 goals, I think it is now in 2022, and becoming almost a bit of a fan favourite for that work and everything he gives to the game, and not least the constant nuisance he seems to give to the defence.
Yeah, he's been phenomenally impressive, I think, over the last few weeks. He's probably, this is probably the best spell of his career at the moment. Obviously, his whole career has been just blighted by injury. When we first signed him, he would pretty much have 1 game on, 1 game off, because he'd just miss it through injury the next game. And he's managed to put a run. Unfortunately, he did come off injured against Sheffield United. I haven't quite heard the extent of that yet, but it'll be interesting to see. At least we've got a week between games, so hopefully it's nothing serious, because if he does miss out, it's just a great shame for a player who he reminds me a little bit of Carlos Tevez. I think back on whatever FIFA it was, whenever Carlos Tevez got the ball, the commentator would say, with his bulldog-like approach. And Mason Bennett strikes me with that. He's quite short, a bit stocky, but he's just so strong, great leap. And the pressing he does, obviously, when you're in the Den, if you're chasing defenders down and winning it back, the fans love that. I mean, most fans do. And he does it effectively. It's not just pointless running. And that's probably why he causes himself so many injuries sometimes. It's the effort that he puts in, with his body maybe being a bit fragile, but he's getting the goals he deserves. I mean, his celebration now, well, not even for his goal, but against Derby, everyone knows kind of his history with Derby and the love-hate relationship, let's say, he has with their fan base. But he absolutely loved giving it to them, even though he didn't score the goal. He's just been absolutely fantastic the last few weeks, and it's so great to see a player who, for my mind, when he came to Millwall, obviously, he just needed a change of scene. Someone who, like I say, broke through so young and just had bad, terrible luck with his career. Obviously, someone who just needed someone to take him under his wing. He came to Millwall with Rowett, who he knew, and with Scott Malone, who he knew as well. I think they're quite close. They often travel back up where their families are together. And he's just in an environment now where getting on with people, playing good football and playing regular football, which I think is just a massive difference. He's never looked poor. It's just about getting minutes out of him, and he's starting to do that this season, and the goals will come.
Yeah, absolutely, and fantastic as well to see how much he seems to be enjoying his football at the moment at Millwall. Well, obviously the third in that attacking trio that we're sort of focusing on, Tyler Bury, another one who it looked perhaps like his season was going to be sort of ruined by injury. Obviously, really impressed at Hartlepool United early on, and sort of taken League Two by storm, as it were, and then picked up the injury that obviously Rowett opted to keep him in January rather than send him back out on loan, and those attacking injuries, it really did feel like in that QPR game after Ollie Burke went off, like it was a sort of audition for Bury to show that he can be relied upon, and we've seen that over the last few weeks. Obviously, a really exciting player, but for perhaps those that either don't get to the Den regularly or sort of non-Millwall fans, just how good is Tyler Bury.
Yeah, I think he's really exciting. You mentioned his loan to Hartlepool. I think there's always a telltale sign with the players when they're playing at a level that is just too easy for them. He went out on loan to Hartlepool. He came in, and he's a winger, by trade, and I think it has been his whole career. They put him up front because of his electric pace, and he's good off the ball movement as well. They put him up front, and he scored, I think it was 5 goals in 6 games, 4 of which were just unbelievable. Great curling shots, beating defenders, taking on everyone, and he just immediately looked way too good for that level. They've got a player, they've just stuck him up front because he's just better than everyone. And I think if he'd have stayed there, he could have had a 20-goal season, I think, if he'd kept going. Unfortunately, 6 games in, tore his hamstring, brought back to the club. And every time he's played in a Millwall shirt, maybe he's had 5-10 minutes at the end of the game, maybe started to get 20 minutes. before he went out on loan and after coming back, and always seemed to change the game. Always wanted to, one of these young players who wants to get on the ball, wants to make an impact in the game, doesn't necessarily want to hide away from it or ease his way in. Second he's on the pitch, give me the ball, I'm going to run at a defender. And Millwall fans love that from a winger. And everyone has been calling for him to have a chance. You can't have these young players if they're never going to play. I think that was one of the things that was frustrating with the Ollie Burke signing, to an extent, that we're bringing in this guy on loan when we've got Tyler Bury, who has been called back from loan and you think can do a job around the squad. And it took Burke's injury for Tyler Bury to get on. And the best thing from Tyler's perspective, I imagine, is that Burke came off 30 minutes into the game when he was injured against QPR. So Tyler had an hour to make a difference and gets the goal in the second half of the counter. An absolutely fantastic finish. While we're breaking, Jed Wallace again instrumental in it, but a brilliant finish. And you saw the squad's reaction to it. Jed Wallace mentioned him after the game and just saying how proud he was of him to get that goal, and then scores again the week later or a few days later against Derby. He's just an incredibly exciting attacking prospect. Obviously, we've got Danny McNamara and Billy Mitchell centre mid and right wing back, but a young exciting attacker is what every fan wants, and he has taken every single challenge in his stride. Gary Rowett mentioned that when they were kind of thinking about getting him back on loan, he was in his office a couple times saying, "You need to give me minutes. I need my chance. I'm good enough to make it." And hearing that from a young player who, like I say, that confidence that he has and is repaying the faith. I think when Burke, I'm not sure how much longer Burke's got left out, maybe a few weeks, he will struggle to get back in the team if Bury continues how he is. I don't see why, this part of the season will be great for Bury to effectively learn how to be Jed Wallace's replacement potentially for the rest of the year, if we can keep hold of him now.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously the cliche about young attacking players is that they get fans on their feet, but I think where we are in the den, in the press box, you can obviously see directly across to the other stand, and it is really noticeable, particularly in that QPR game. Every time he got the ball and started to drive at players, you sort of saw all the Millwall fans on the opposite sides, like off their chairs, on their feet, sort of anticipating something exciting, and he certainly is bringing something exciting. Obviously, reports yesterday, Ryan, that Brentford are interested in him. We've talked previously about the decision to let Ned Wallace sort of run his contract down rather than perhaps cashing in and looking to reinvest in the squad. Do you think there's any way Mill will look at Tyler Bury and think, if a sizable offer comes in, we let him go, or do you think with Wallace going that they need that talismanic attacker too much to let us, particularly homegrown player, go?
Yeah, I think it would be a very bad, not just playing decision, but PR decision for the club if they were to catch in on Bury after effectively 6 months. He's been at the club a couple of years now. We brought him in. I think Neil Harris brought him in from AFC Wimbledon. He's been at the club a couple of years, but obviously this is his breakthrough.
Yeah.
The club haven't given up on Jed Wallace yet. Obviously, we're not going in January. They have kind of doubled down, saying, we are going to continue to try to change his mind to get him signed an extension. It just looks unlikely. So to sell Bury as well, I think it would need to be a massive offer, and I don't think, especially a side like Brentford, who, I think it's a report like that can kind of get spun out of context. If a club is looking at a player, clubs are always looking at players. Tyler Bury's a guy who's never played at this level before, and in his first 2 games has got 2 goals. I'm sure a lot of teams and analytics departments and scouts will go, oh, maybe have a look at this guy. He's 21 and he's doing it at the championship level from the off. Let's see how he continues and develops. So, if he goes on for the rest of the 6 months and reaches 10 goals and 10 assists and just has an unbelievable turn of form, people are going to look at him. But I don't think there would be any kind of serious consideration of moving him on in the summer. It would definitely, if he plays well, he can be not necessarily a replacement for Jed Wallace, because that's going to be really hard. But without the money coming in for a Jed Wallace transfer, the club will need to be creative in how they replace him, and having Tyler Bury here already is going to help a long way towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked then about the sort of forward players. Is there anyone else that really jumps out to you in having had an impact on the turnaround in form over the past few weeks?
Yeah, I think it was almost a mentality change. I think it was after the Preston draw where we drew 0-0 at home, and Gary Rowett I think someone asked him, are Millwall kind of still in the playoffs? We dropped down to about maybe 14th, 15th there. He said, is the aim still playoffs? And he said, we're just going to enjoy the rest of the season, see what happens, and we'll kind of see where we end up. And that's probably the first time I can recall that I've heard him not say the aim is the playoffs until it's, late in the season has become mathematically impossible. Since he's come in, the aim has always been we want to get to the playoffs, whether that means this season finishing 10th, 9th, around the playoffs. The aim is to get there. And as soon as he said that, okay, we were then lost the next game to Fulham 3-0, but everyone loses to Fulham. Since he said that, the pressure seems to have just dropped off. It's very much the same players. Billy Mitchell started playing really well. Keith and Beld came in the side and did really well until he also tore his hamstring. But Saville's come back in well, who hadn't really got off to a great start since his return. Danny McNamara has been fantastically popular, coming through the academy at right wing back, and he just goes from strength to strength. He will, I think, in a couple of seasons, will probably be a Premier League wing back if he keeps developing as he is. Murray Wallace is probably the biggest fan favourite around at the moment, and a good shout for player of the season. He's for those who don't know, we signed him from Scunthorpe when we got promoted from the League One as a centre back. But since he's played at Millwall, he's played at left back, left wing back, centre back, and he just, for a 6'2", 6'3", big broken nosed Scottish centre half, he seems to have great feet, and his work rate and energy is just absolutely fantastic. And Millwall fans absolutely love him. So those would be the ones probably that the club's shouting out. Sean Hutchinson also been imperious since he came back from fitness a bit earlier on the season. Went off injured again against Sheffield United. So another one that fingers will be crossed that it's not a long one, but we do have Daniel Ballard coming back from injury as well to step in if needed.
Talking about the recent form, then it's 4 wins on the bout, 5 in the last 7. Are you expecting that's obviously been amidst something of an injury crisis, and are you expecting that the squad to really be boosted over the next sort of few weeks and perhaps month, but by the return of some of those players?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that this has happened. The good run of form has happened, like you say, as the injury list has just been mounted. I think it was 3 or 4 in a week that all did their hamstring. Luke Freeman came in, obviously, we spoke about him, came in on loan from Sheffield United on deadline day, played 17 minutes against Fulham, tore his hamstring, he's out for the rest of the season now. And that as soon as that happened, everyone's just like, that's Millwall's luck. Ollie Burke, same, hamstring gone. Keith de Beld, hamstring gone. All of those, to add to Tom Bradshaw, Benica Phobie, so many players that we've got out. Daniel Ballard just coming back. Ryan Leonard still not quite back. All players who would be in the first team lineup normally. It's an odd one. If the side's playing well without them, I don't think anyone at this point naturally steps in straight away and retakes their spot. I think what will boost the squad is as the fixtures pile up and as it gets into the run-in, we might have some players who are fresh. And it's a tricky one because they'll need a few games to get back to full strength. So if they're it's probably easier coming into a side in form if we can maintain it and getting your fitness back in that way. Then coming into a side that's really struggling, our season's petering out and we don't have a lot to play for, it's probably a little bit harder to get your fitness back then and get that motivation to get back in and know that you're going to have to work hard to get into this team. Because, at the moment, with our form, do Benica Phobie and Tom Bradshaw walk straight back into the team? Well, we're scoring goals, we're playing well, attacking. Would they walk straight back in? Or is it a matter of when I get my chance, I know I need to score because I need to dislodge this player. So, good form is just motivation. And I think the players coming back from injury will know that they're going to have a battle on their hands to get back in the side, which can only help the team.
Absolutely. And I guess to come to the sort of title point, I think we're both in that press conference when Gary Rowett just sort of said, with all the injuries we've had, we've got a few players back now. We just want to enjoy the rest of the season. Do you think that's obviously worked to relieve a lot of the pressure? But Millwall now beginning to rise up the table again. Yeah. Should we be considering them as serious top 6 contenders right now, or is it a case of more saying let's see where we are in 2 or 3 weeks when we've seen whether that they can sort of consistently play in the way they're playing and continue to sort of build points?
Yeah, I think March will be a big month in terms of defining that. We played QPR and Sheffield United both in that playoff running. Like I mentioned, QPR out of form when we played them, and Sheffield United in good form. So that's a good test. Any Millwall fan will tell you that our real test is Reading this Saturday, because when we were playing well, we lose to bad sides. It just always seems to be our way. That Reading are not a great side. I know they've picked up a result every now and then, but you would hope if we lose that, then people might go, typical Millwall. That's how it goes. We're on a great run of form, and we lose to one of the worst sides in the division. That will be a good test. And then after that, we've got a month of playing Blackburn, the rescheduled fixture. We've got Middlesbrough, Huddersfield, Stoke, Luton. All teams that are in and around the playoff mix. So that will be the real test of, let's come through March. We've got 4 or 5 games to get through. Where do we sit at the end of that? If you enter March and we're still 3-4 points off of it, then I think you have to say we're right in the mix. So I think that'll be the defining period of the season, and hopefully Millwall can keep their winning run going. We had under Neil Harris had a similar in the first year back. We went, I think it was 17 games unbeaten from about this sort of time until about April, when we lost to Fulham, who had, I think, themselves gone 21 unbeaten. So, we've done it before. Millwall we can be a streaky team when we want to be. And like I say, the Den plays a massive part in that. So I think a big March, and then after that, we'll see where the land lies.
Absolutely. Well, certainly a very exciting month coming up for Millwall fans either way. And that's not really something that we thought we'd be saying sort of 2 or 3 weeks ago. So an exciting time, and we'll certainly have to check back in about a month's time. Well, that is everything from us on the Millwall Fan Debate Show. But at 4 p.m, Alfie Burns will be joined by Marcus Alley and Chris Gallagher to debate the appointment of Mark Hughes at Bradford and assess whether he can get them promoted. So that's not one you want to miss after a sort of shocking but huge name appointment down in League Two. But that just leaves me to say thank you, Ryan, and thanks everyone for watching.